Hello, welcome to Colonel O'Truth's Miniature Issues. For well over a year now, I've been building a fantasy city using simple techniques and materials and no 3D printing. This is Undercrag City. In today's episode, I'm building the Observatory, a hexagonal tower made from cardboard and baking soda. There'll be plenty of miniature roof tiles and a few special touches. I'm starting with a sketch. I want something quite special for this building, and I don't really know how I'm going to approach it. All of this is just getting my imagination going at the moment. Having decided to work with hexagons, there's some calculating to do. I don't just want a straight up and down tower, I want each level to be distinctly different from the others. I'm working quickly and roughly. The sketches are just helping to fix the building in my imagination. I've decided on my dimensions, so it's time to start planning in detail. And don't worry if you can't see what's going on here, a lot of the time I forget too. When I'm happy, I start cutting the pieces for each section. Working with square buildings is easy. Working with polygons, not so much. So I have to take my time and try to be precise. I'm starting from the inside of the middle section of the tower and working upwards at first. I've left holes running through the center of the model where I'm going to run wiring for my LEDs later. This is my preferred 1mm thick black modeling card. While I'm putting all these pieces together, I'll give you a little background of who lives here and why the observatory was built. The astronomer, Phenia, grew up in the caves beneath Undercrag. Raised by parents who were fiercely proud of their heritage and saw no reason to venture into the outside world if they could help it. Consequently, Phenia's journeys to the outside all took place during the day, and she never saw the stars. Then, at the age of 12, she was chosen by the priestess of Highchapel to serve as an acolyte. One winter morning, her turn came to escort the priestess to the sun step. They set out from Highchapel before dawn, while the winter stars still glittered in the sky. I'll come back to Phenia. The various levels of the tower have been completed in their rough form. And now I'm playing with some bits and pieces. These are old cogs from a broken down printer and a couple of galvanized washers. I want to give the impression that the top floor can turn, aligning the telescope to whichever section of the sky Phenia wishes to study. Conveniently, there's a hole through the middle of the cog. My wires can pass through there. A second, smaller cog sits on the side of the building. There are my basic components. Time to start adding more structure and detail. The various buildings of the Overcrag have prominent eaves that jut out at an angle. I'm keeping that idea here. I also want stairs to wrap around the building. I'm using small pieces of 5mm black foam core to build up layers, working from the top down and carving steps into each layer. Finally, having reached the ground, I'll put the whole thing on a base. Now for some detail. Yellow foam for rocks and thin strips of card to make the building a bit more interesting. The line of the roof is going to be complicated, so I'm adding sections where I can at this stage. I'll need to get inside the building later to add window glass, but I can close these lower sections in now. It's starting to take shape and helping me to visualize the final thing. Little triangles under the apex of the eaves, another common characteristic of these buildings. And then it's on to the decorative stonework. I'm using thin black card here so that I can fold it around the corners. I've measured alternating small pieces and wider pieces, cutting them off in pairs, scoring across the line, and folding them. This will give a better finish than putting individual pieces either side of the corner. You can get away with that easily on squares, not so much here. I'm alternating the alignment of these as well. Small, large, small, large. Now for the rest. How about a windowsill? And some smaller pieces of stonework. As you can see, these are not complicated techniques. Cardboard, PVA glue, a good sharp pencil, and a bit of patience. I'm going to break up some of these larger surfaces with tiny scattered bits of stone. Now I'm adding to the peaks of these roofs. This is where attention to detail when I constructed the hexagons starts to pay off. Everything looks nice and regular. Little triangles to finish off the ends. Time to add some stonework to the steps. It doesn't take long to draw these stones in, and they look quite effective. Not forgetting the edges. Now to add some natural rock. Red clay to break up the lines, as I want it to look like the observatory has been built into a rocky promontory. When I'm happy that I've added enough detail, I'm painting all of the stonework of the observatory with PVA glue. Working quickly so I can do this all in one go before the glue dries. On goes the baking soda. Tap off the surplus. Recycle. Give it a few minutes to dry and brush it with a soft brush. I'm going to leave that alone for a bit and get on with the top floor. This curved section will house the telescope, but up until now, I haven't given much thought to what it's actually going to look like. So I'm piecing it together with offcuts. Now for some painting. It quickly became clear to the priestess of Highchapel that Phenia was more interested in the night than the day. So when she was 16, the priestess gave Phenia some money and sent her out into the world to learn about the night sky. Here are those cogs. I've sprayed them black. This gives a nice solid undercoat. I'm going to give them 2 or 3 coats of gold paint. I only need to do the outside edge of the big one. Let that dry, and it's back to the tower. I'm going to add PVA and sand for some texture here and there. Earth and mosses. Half a teaspoon of sand goes a long way. I wonder if I'll ever get through that whole bucket. When that's dry, I paint the earth areas brown, and it's time to dry brush the tower with light grey paint and then white. Phenia wandered the world for 10 years, learning from everyone she could. When she returned to Undercrag City, she vowed never to enter the caves again. She paid her respects to the priestess of Highchapel and then followed the same route she had walked so many years before, passing the sunstep to emerge on the overcrag. The dry brushing on the tower is done, and now I'm dry brushing the earth. First a light earth tone, and then a pale yellow. All of these colours overlap slightly. I'm not being precise. I want things to look organic. The cogs get a thin wash of brown ink. This is 1 part ink to 4 parts water. Now a thin black ink wash over all of the stone. It doesn't matter if it overlaps into the earth. A brown wash on the earth. Patches of green mosses, and wash that out with yellow. It's surprising how quickly this starts to look solid. With the messy stuff done, I can add my window glass. Acetate sheet that's been obscured with Mod Podge. A simple piece of balsa wood as a door. And at last, I can start to finish the shape of the roofs. It's a little bit fiddly. These are complicated angles. The top floor is going to be timber frame rather than stone. I couldn't envisage the cogs being able to turn a stone building without it falling apart. I'm giving a little bit more attention to the telescope. Circle stencils are an invaluable tool. Bit of careful cutting. bit of gentle bending. And on we go. And now a few more small details. These are just simple strips of card, but adding little layers like this always makes things look so much more interesting. It doesn't take much extra effort. Now those characteristic eaves. Pieces of matchstick. This echoes the other buildings on the Overcrag. Little squares of balsa as well, just to hide the join. With all of that done, more painting. A light grey undercoat first. As you might imagine, Phenia was a highly intelligent woman, but she'd returned to Undercrag City penniless, but with a wealth of knowledge. Desperate to make ends meet, she took work where she could. And then a fortuitous encounter with a member of the Builders Guild set her on the right path. The builders got behind her and, guided by her designs, built the Observatory. The top floor's drying, it's just had a coat of brown ink. So it's time for roof tiles. I've drawn out a sheet of these. They're 3mm wide, 6mm long, and cut from a cat food packet. Once again, the simplest materials you can imagine, and a bit of attention to detail. The horizontal lines you can see are to help me keep everything parallel to the top of the roof. I don't want things going off at a weird angle. That took a while. Strips of paper from a sketchbook as flashings across the top, just to tidy everything up. I think that looks rather special. My brown ink's dry. Just getting a dry brush of pale yellow, paying particular attention to the panels. And then white. While that's drying, light grey on all of the roof tiles. And then pick out the timbers with brown ink. Being translucent, the brown ink allows the grain and the highlighting to show through. resulting in a beautiful wooden finish. Same brown ink covers all of the roof tiles, not forgetting the little edges. Then it's time for more dry brushing. Pale yellow again. This whole city has been built and painted with a very simple palette. I'm not using many colours at all, just different combinations. White over the yellow, and finally, rust ink. The top floor's been given the same treatment. Lots of fiddly little roof tiles at strange angles, and I'm just adding a few little details. Now for the telescope. This is the only extravagance in this whole build. These styrene plastic tubes aren't particularly cheap, but they're very precise, they fit together beautifully, and they're easy to work with. But they can go ping. Found it. I'm going to fill in the end with a smaller piece of tube and a piece of rod. Again, a very simple design. I've spray painted that black on the end of a paintbrush, and I'm going to give it the same colour as the cogs. Back to the top floor. I've added gold detailing, and it's time to finish the roof, just like before. All my components are ready. It's time to add lighting. I've created something of a wiring loom. Poking the ends down through the model, pushing the LEDs inside with my trusty pointy stick, and I can super glue the cog onto the tower. Finally, the top floor can cover the cog. Almost finished. In homage to the priestess of Highchapel, Phenia elected not to raise a family, but instead to take on acolytes. Women and men who showed an aptitude for astronomy. In goes the telescope. Now it's time to think about adding it into the model, making sure I've got a level surface first. I've marked out where my tower's going and cut a hole to post the wiring through. Stripping the paper off my foam board, I can detail this any way I like later on. It's just more convenient to do this now. And I'll add a small area of stonework at the foot of the stairs. Not too much. Let's glue that down and hold it in place while the glue dries. And at last it's time to sculpt this into the rest of the model. Red Das clay. Plenty of PVA. Little patches of sand. And paint just as before. We're nearly there. Being careful to catch any drips, there's a lot of buildings down below. Green and yellow. And to the right there you can see the sun step and the stairs leading up to the overcrag. A bit more sculpting so that I can add a handrail. Little pieces of basswood rather than balsa. Balsa's too fragile for this. More texturing. And it's time to add some vegetation. Some clumps of flowers. And plenty of grass, just heaped onto the wet glue. I'll brush off the surplus when it's dry. And finally, the handrail itself, more basswood. Then I just touch up the cut ends with brown ink, and we're done. Phenia's Observatory, a mechanical wonder of the overcrag. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel, like and share. And please feel free to leave comments and questions down below. I answer all of them, and I love hearing from this wonderful community. That's all for this week. I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.